Hello, everybody. Welcome into our Dog Nation Happy Hour, poured by Classic City Lager. Great to have all of you with us here today. My name is Brandon Adams. Also happy to have former Georgia All-American John Stinchcomb on hand as well. Busy show for us. Before we're done, we'll do a lot to preview Georgia at Missouri on Saturday. Expect to be cold in Columbia. We'll see how that impacts the Georgia offense, and frankly, how it impacts the Missouri offense as well. If the Tigers put up 50 points against Arkansas this past Saturday, this is a Missouri team now ranked in the college football playoff top 25, and standing is a pretty formidable test here for the Dogs, and we'll see if it's the final test for Georgia this season or not, with obviously a scheduled game at noon against Vanderbilt December the 19th, but obviously some questions about that. It's the fact that Vanderbilt didn't show up a week ago. But the point is, Georgia's got Missouri coming up this Saturday. We'll certainly look forward to previewing a lot of that. John, before we get to that, though, can I start on kind of a different subject here for a moment? The SEC has announced plans for a major announcement tonight at 6 p.m. I want to show that's a couple hours from now from the folks who are watching our Dog Nation Happy Hour live. I want to show you this tweet from Andy Staples, and Staples has the inside scoop on what this meeting is about. This has been largely speculated on social media anyway. Staples kind of taking it a step further on Twitter, saying that the SEC announcement scheduled for 6 p.m. relates to the conference's television deal. Disney-owned ESPN will buy the rights to the best game each week, giving the network the rights to all SEC football games. That package is currently on CBS, which owns the rights through 2023. Staples writes that at the moment, CBS still intends to finish the deal, but that could change for the right price, though. So, John, I don't know how much you get into TV and which game network the Dogs are on, but I've always felt like that CBS has done a really good job with the SEC. I realize that Gary Danielson, the color analyst, is kind of not everyone's cup of tea, but overall, there's a bigness to the game on CBS, I think, with the great theme music at the beginning, the fact that it's available in all 50 states. It's the most watched over-the-air broadcast network. And I have to say that, and it sounds like the SEC is about to make a bunch of money for itself, so I'm sure they're happy about it. But for me, there is a little tinge of sadness about the SEC television footprint no longer including CBS, if that's indeed what's about to happen.
Well, if that is so the case, I think CBS has done a great job. I really care more about who the play-by-play and color analysts are, because some of them can really just grate on my nerves. And I think CBS, the production quality that they've put forth, it's become an SEC affiliate that most people are comfortable with and common. They know where to tune their TVs in when the game's being played, the big game that is, and that's probably going to change. But for the almighty dollar, I think that's what drives the bus, so to speak. And if it benefits the SEC financially, then of course they're going to make that move.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. One of the things that's been reported and talked about over the years is the fact that CBS, when it originally signed this deal, kind of got what has turned out to be a pretty big bargain on all of this compared to the rest of television rights. And so that's obviously something, the kind of thing that the SEC wants to correct. And I agree with you that the individuals calling the game ultimately give you the biggest feel for how it presents itself on television. But for whatever reason, and maybe if you just kind of grew up watching games as opposed to actually playing the games, maybe this kind of comes across a little bit different. But to me, things just seem bigger on CBS in comparison to ESPN. It's the one knock I kind of have of ESPN, that everything kind of feels like a part of a smaller piece of a programming puzzle. You get the scroll down at the bottom that's giving you, tiddlywink scores and things like that. There's just something about ESPN that has a way of making, I would say, sporting events feel smaller. Whereas when they're on the same network that John Madden and Pat Summerall used to once call games on, there's something about the da 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 da. There's something about that just feels bigger. And if this is making the transition to ABC's ESPN, which it certainly seems like it's probably going to, I hope in the future that ESPN can kind of tap into some of this stuff that just makes they deal with this on Monday Night Football as well, where it seems way smaller, way more of a niche type thing than the big Sunday night broadcast. I think ESPN's got to try to find a way to make its broadcast just kind of feel a little more prestigious.
I love that take. I probably haven't looked long and hard enough at it, but man, that's true. I do feel like, with the ticker at the bottom, and it's kind of the local chain that you love food wise versus the big nationwide. You feel like you've been there, done that a time or two. I get that. That makes sense to me. I haven't looked at it quite as much as you have, BA, but man, the pregame, the music that comes on right before the game, that certainly sets the tone. I know my wife, she loves, probably more than watching the game, is the intro videos they do for each team, kind of little hype videos, get you set. Yeah, I would hope they bring some sort of those elements back to the SEC game, so it doesn't feel like another gear in the machine that ESPN is.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Let me take a couple comments here on our Dog Nation Happy Hour, poured by the Classic City Lager. We'll do a bunch of stuff here on our program here today. Justin Gunter likes the CBS graphics and stats. Michael Webb says, my knock on ESPN is genuinely pitiful announcers. It's like they did a casting call just to hire every mediocre poor announcer. As someone who's been an announcer all of his life, I will say that it's not always easy to please people when it comes to that kind of stuff. And it's pretty common to criticize, the broadcasters on one side or the other. But I do understand what Michael's saying, that not everybody on the ESPN family of broadcast is exactly everybody's cup of tea. I kind of understand that. Robert Anthony Gallup says we can have Brad Nessler and Mark Richt. So I think the gist that you're getting here is the people like Nessler on the play-by-play, the same way they liked, I would say, Vern Lundquist before that, who still does a good job in the Masters. And then someone even mentioned Sean McDonough, the previous CBS play-by-play guy before that. It's that analyst chair that people have a hard time with. And John, you've got some experience there. You do Saints preseason games. Maybe sliding you into that new broadcast position as a color analyst. Maybe that's the next role for you right there.
Well, I guarantee every analyst has heard their fair share of criticism, and probably a little more than their fair share. There's guys that are universally, I don't want to say hated, but obviously people don't enjoy the remarks they have to add to a game. And Danielson, for whatever reason, has been the subject and target for a number of the online comments that I've seen in the past. But, ESPN, they've got a ton of color analysts, and it's usually divided up per conference, guys that mostly call SEC games, ACC games, but it's such a wide berth. I mean, there's a ton of folks that do color analysis for these football games. I'll be interested to see who they tab as the go-to guy for the SEC premier game on Saturday.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. By the way, do you enjoy, I know you do them, but do you enjoy doing games? How much of a adrenaline shot do you get from being in the booth and calling the action as it happens? I've done some play-by-play I did one college game one time, only high school for me other than that. But I do get that kind of adrenaline shot from doing it. I haven't done it in a while and don't do it much. But there's something exciting about being in that booth, having the headset on. How much do you enjoy doing that?
I love it. Personally, that's kind of more of a comfort zone, I think, for most former players, because when you're not doing play-by-play and you're just providing color, you're just sharing with the fans what you see. And for most players that have been in the fire or been in the film room, they're able to pick up trends a little bit quicker. And, it's kind of fun to share those insights with folks that probably don't see the game in the same lens that you do. And I think that's why there's a number of quarterbacks that do a really good job, because they can kind of see the defenses as they make the adjustments. And they've been a part of some of those meetings that there's game planning that's going on before the game that you see play out, and what they're trying to do with the motions and the adjustments. And for a player, there's a lot more comfort when you get back to actually talking about the game of football.
Do you think that we've heard from a lot of the SEC network broadcasters and whatnot, CBS as well, on Dog Nation Daily this year, and some of which those are guys that are having to do these games from their home, much the same way you're sitting in your office right now, big video hookup in front of them, and they're having to try to follow this from several hundred miles away in their home. I'm assuming you have not broadcast a game from your house before. How different do you think that would be?
I've talked to a couple different guys, my brother included, Zach Strief, who does play-by-play for the Saints. You make those adjustments. The nice thing is you don't have to drive, and you're not planning on 2 plane flights on for a Saturday game, a Friday night and a Sunday morning. but it comes with its challenges. Usually in the booth, you've got a statistician and a spotter who will tell you, that was number 37 on the tackle. That was a 12-yard gain. That's the, seventh completion in a row. Really good information that you can include in your broadcast. You don't have a guy handing you those slips of paper, but they're starting to innovate a little bit. Usually there's multiple screens set up for these broadcasters. And it's a little bit different, BA, because you're not sitting next to the guy that you're working with. I think you get a feel for when a person wants to jump in and when you're going to lay out, and he's got more of a story to tell. And you can just kind of wait and let him have his space. When you're not able to make those eye contact moments in real time, there's some serious adjusting that has to take place. And I think it comes back to just the feel and rapport you have with the guy you work with.
I'm glad to have that feel and rapport with you right now. It's our Dog Nation Happy Hour, poured by Classic City Lager. Our friends at Creature Comforts Brewing Company, and we've told you this all season long, you don't have to be in Athens to get it, although it's kind of nice to imagine that one day we will all be in Athens again. You can stop by and see them there in their snow tire facility right there in downtown. But whatever retailer you're shopping at right now, you can pick up some Classic City Lager in 6 and 12-pack cans all year long. It's a good cold beer. They're also a proud sponsor of our Dog Nation home gating channel. You can check that out. It's going to keep up with all the ways in which folks are home gating here this season when you can't be in the stadium or around the stadium doing the things that we typically like to do, at least for many people. This has been a very different year, but Classic City Lager still has tasted great. It's a lighter tasting lager style beer, but there's no sacrifice of the flavor there. It is good cold beer. Our friends at Classic City Lager from Creature Comforts Brewing Company. All right, let's talk Georgia and Missouri here for a moment, give a little bit of a preview of that. I do want to get later on into, I guess there's some reports out there. Mike Griffith, I think, is going to have this at dognation.com. Looks like Notori Johnson, one-time Georgia offensive and defensive lineman, a guy that's really tried both sides of the ball to get on the field. Looks like he may have plans into the transfer portal. We'll see what Mike's got up on that at dognation.com, and we'll deal with some of that before we're done on today's show. But let me keep it to Georgia, Missouri here for a moment. John, this is a game in which I was on the radio this afternoon. We were talking about this. Because Missouri is pretty good, ranked in the top 25, the college football playoff top 25 this week. Because of that, I think they actually get Georgia's best shot. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of distraction from Georgia. I think this is a team that I believe is kind of chomping in the bit, ready to play after it didn't get a chance to play last week. This is obviously all, to a degree, speculation. But I'd be pretty surprised if Georgia doesn't have its full focus on Missouri on Saturday and coming out with a real motivation to play well, to play hard. I expect a pretty good showing for Georgia on Saturday, and will be surprised if we don't get a chance to see that. How do you feel about the game?
I would be so disappointed if they didn't put their best foot forward, because all the trap game items that certainly could arise in the middle of the season, they aren't present right now. I mean, you should be motivated for a number of different reasons, but top 25 opponent, a team that's won 3 in a row, you just missed an opportunity to play the game last week. So you should be as fresh as possible this late in the season. You don't have any of those trappings that you normally would. Georgia's got plenty to play for, and I would expect, you can't make any excuses for them if they don't have one of their better performances on Saturday.
Yeah, because, there haven't been a lot of instances of Georgia beating this season, even though I think, listen, there just haven't been that many instances where, Georgia's going out there and, beating a team that's turned out to have a winning record. Auburn, they beat them. Auburn has a chance to finish at 6-4. But for the most part, the wins that Georgia has collected this season have come against teams that have not had winning records. Obviously, the losses, Florida and Alabama, those are the measuring stick games for Georgia. Missouri's a far cry from that. But, given the way that Missouri played last week and beating Arkansas, given the way the stretch they've been on in recent weeks, putting up a lot of wins, especially there at home in Columbia, this would be a little bit of a validation for what Georgia was. Not quite what we hoped they would be, but certainly not in the also-ran pack of the SEC either, and frankly, very much worthy and deserving of the college football playoff top 10 ranking they've been sporting.
Well, they need to win it. And I think in a convincing way. It's a top 25 opponent. It's an SEC East opponent that really is kind of an arrow-up team. You played South Carolina a couple of weeks ago that, they're going to try to put some pieces back together. They have tabbed their next head coach, but Missouri is a year advanced from where South Carolina currently is. When they tabbed Eli Drinkwitz, that's their guy. This is who we think is going to rebound our program. I think he's done a really good job of trying to build momentum. And for Georgia, this is an opportunity to say that we still belong in that discussion of top tier teams, not just middle of the pack competing teams that, although we weren't able to answer the bell against Alabama and Florida, we are still very much a factor. And that matters for the rest of this year and especially leading into 2021. But there's plenty of motivating factor for this game. Offensively, defensively, there's some identity that's still being established on both sides of the ball. I think for some of these seniors, they're trying to leave their mark and make it one that's pretty special. But Missouri was also the same team that was 2-3 at one point. They've allowed crazy amounts of yards from their defense. And with that, they also had 380 passing yards last week. So a team that's had some up and downs, but Georgia needs to show that there's some separation between some of these up and coming teams like Missouri and that they're still a national factor.
Scott Harris on YouTube asking about the weather. Last time I checked, the high was expected to be around 40 degrees, and there is some chance of precipitation. This is not exactly frozen tundra weather, but it's way, way colder than even the coldest Georgia game in most years. John, is 40 degrees cold enough to notice for the players in the field on Saturday?
Well, it will be if it's wet. If it's raining, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'd much rather it snow than it be 33 degrees and raining.
Yeah.
That is a miserable feeling where you just feel punished for being outside. So I think it depends on the precipitation. If it's just cold, that's not a problem. I mean, you go out there and you play ball. For most folks, it's kind of fun. You know, you don't have to worry about getting as tired, but it should be a great atmosphere to play football this late in the season. The X factor is the rain.
Right. I'm curious, you didn't play in this game. You were too young, but I believe your brother did. Were you at the Georgia-Auburn game in 1997? It would have been the game after the upset over Florida. That's probably the coldest game I remember in Sanford Sam. I remember, big sweater. You're just not getting winter dressed for very many Georgia games, but I had like big, huge sweater, a lot of layers. Were you and it was a very disappointing defeat to Damian Craig and Takeo Spikes and some of those guys. But were you at the Georgia-Auburn game in 1997 prior to becoming a player there? It was freezing that night.
That's brutal. So those are the type games that, and you know what makes it feel worse, BA, is when you lose.
Yeah.
So when you win, it makes everything feel better. You get out there and you perform well, and, you forget about the fact that you're cold and miserable. But
that's right.
40 degrees and dry, that's a great way to go play a football game. I think, as long as it's not precipitous on Saturday, it should be a great atmosphere to play in.
HR Picking Stuff on YouTube says Kirby should let JT throw to get him, should have been letting him throw more, get him ready for the game that's coming up. And I know a lot of folks, John, are eager to see that from the Georgia offense, but really for Georgia defense that hasn't passed its test this season against the better quarterbacks that it's played, Kyle Trask and Mac Jones, I'm not going to say that Connor Basilick is in that category for Missouri, but this is a guy that's been throwing the ball pretty well. This is also, in addition to another showcase for the Georgia offense, it has a chance to be a proving ground for the Georgia defense that could really use one of those moments on Saturday.
Yeah, I'll start with Georgia's offensive side of the ball. I think Missouri has to force Georgia to do something other than run the football. Because if you watch their game against Arkansas, they could not stop Arkansas from running attack. They just ran right through them. So I'm sure Georgia's game plan is we're going to make Missouri prove to us that they can stop our run, load the box, whatever it is, before you just swing your weight over into the pass game. Now, here's the great news. I think Georgia fans and this Georgia team has never had more confidence in their passing attack since Jake Fromm left the building. So much better situated than we have been in those type scenarios where a defense is going, well, we're going to sell out to eliminate one aspect of the offense's attack. Now, on the other side of the ball for Georgia's defense, there's still plenty to prove, in my opinion, especially against a capable passing attack. Missouri last week puts up 50 points. Redshirt freshman Bazelak. How do you pronounce that?
Bazelak, I think. I always say Bazelak. Who knows if I'm right?
Yeah. Well, he's got to earn it for us to pronounce your name right?
I
like for us to learn how to say your name. We know it, but
That's
to
right.
learn how to say it properly, you're going to have to perform on a week in, week out basis. But I mean, he was throwing that ball all around, and for this Georgia defense, they haven't really been. I think statistically they're still number 2 in the nation and overall defense, or something that's pretty impressive. But against capable passing attacks, they haven't really been able to answer that bell quite like fans were expecting.
Can I go back on something for a moment? Because Robert Reynolds has a really good comment on Facebook, but it's actually about, we were talking about broadcasters, and it looks like the SEC is about to leave CBS and go strictly to ABC, ESPN properties. In terms of talking about the broadcasters, and Robert actually giving a compliment to Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson, he says that Brad and Gary actually understand the players and the schools and the traditions, and I think that's important. John, I think this is 100% true, and you can just tell this. It is so obvious when you're watching a guy broadcast one of these games, and it's clear that he knows the history and tradition, and he cares about that kind of thing. He's a true fan of the sport, and not someone just trying to put a broadcast tape together so he can go do a Chargers-Raiders game somewhere down the line. Someone who really cares about the college football product and the SEC product. That is the kind of thing that you cannot fake. It's obvious when you see it. And the games and the broadcast are way worse. I think Robert's 100% right about this. When you have someone who may have all the chops of a broadcaster, eloquent speech, good looking, whatever else, but if they don't have the deep roots in the SEC, it ain't the same thing, and it's not going to get the job done for me.
Couldn't agree more. And I hope that what they do is they tab 2 specific people. Here's your play-by-play guy. Here's your color commentator. And that they are very familiar with the SEC. I think that's what makes it special. They know those stories that you don't get with the informational flip chart that most of the broadcast teams get in 45 minutes with the staff to kind of learn each program. That's not the same as having the familiarity with these 14 teams in one conference, knowing their backstory, what got them there, trends, those type things. You can't pick up in just a couple of days of film study and 45 minutes with a phone interview with a coach. You're not going to get those things. And I do think that the combo that CBS has put forward, they knew the programs. They knew what was going on with each team. I would expect and hope that same sort of knowledge and intimacy with each program would exist. And I think all you have to do there is tab 2 that are very familiar with the SEC, that do a good job and know more than just what stat sheets can tell you from week 2 and week 3.
It's our Dog Nation Happy Hour. It's poured by Classic City Lager from Creature Comforts Brewing Company. Check out some Classic City Lager. Good cold beer, available in 6 and 12-pack cans, whatever retailer you like to go to. Get yourself set up for the holiday season and a lot of football heading towards this weekend. John, in the time we have left, I do want to talk about a report that Mike Griffith has confirmed for Dog Nation, that former 4-star signee from the 2017 class, Notori Johnson, who started at Georgia as an offensive lineman, briefly gave a try to the defensive line, came back to the offensive line at the end of last season to account for some lack of depth heading towards the Sugar Bowl. Well, Notori Johnson has decided to enter the transfer portal. Mike Griffith is confirming there for DogNation.com. Notori will join Trey Blunt, Micaiah Tongue, who've also recently entered the transfer portal for Georgia. This is the kind of thing that we knew was coming. And, John, here's something I'm a very passionate believer in, that for someone like Notori, someone like Trey Blunt, a part of that very deep, Georgia 2017 signing class, for Micaiah Tongue, a part of the 2019 signing class, for guys like this, there's the assumption, well, they're not playing. They must just not be very good players. When you have as much talent as I believe that Georgia hasn't broken through to win the national championship yet. We all know that. But Georgia's a pretty talent-rich roster, very deep roster. It is not an indictment on a player if you're not playing as much as you want to on this roster here. And for the most part, this is exactly what I believe the transfer portal is supposed to be for. In the case of Notori, the most recent news, John, I'm going to give him a ton of credit because this is a guy who's shown no ego whatsoever at Georgia. There are a lot of guys who would have tucked tail and run a lot sooner than he did. He's tried to keep his body in good shape. He's tried both sides of the ball. He has been willing to do anything that you would want to ask a guy to do to try to find a way to get some playing time. I do not have a bad word to say about Notori Johnson at all as he gets ready to move on and find a new place to play some college football. Sad to see him go, but I wish him well as he does so.
Well, and welcome to the Wild West of college sports right now with the one free transfer rule. This I expect to see more often from a number of players. Now, Notori, I agree with you in the sentiment that he's been willing. I mean, if you need me at D-line, we lighten numbers. All right, I'll throw my hat into the ring there. But what I think the limiting factor is going to be is scholarships. I can't wait to see how all this plays out. There's a certain cap. Now, it's weird because everybody gets an extra year of eligibility because of COVID during these uncertain times. But still, that's a lot of mouths to feed and tuitions to pay for various programs. I can't wait to see how they make all these numbers work. And in contrast, Robert Beal Jr., didn't he enter the portal last year and he's still on the roster? So just because you enter your name into the transfer portal isn't a guarantee that you're jettisoned from campus. There's still opportunity for you to stick around.
That's right. So you're right. It is a choice the player can make. By going into the portal, you're announcing your intentions to be essentially treated like a free agent. Kirby Smart's really described it that way. But you also have the opportunity to withdraw your name, from the portal and go back and be a part of your team. You mentioned the scholarship part of this, and this is one of the things that Smart has talked about some this week, that it's great that next year seniors don't count against your 85 and they get a chance to come back and have the extra eligibility, or really everybody gets an extra year of eligibility, but you'll measure it in terms of your roster by the seniors who might potentially return. I'm not quite sure how many Georgia seniors would return, but some may choose to, and it's great that they don't count against your 85, but we're not in next year yet. We're still in this year. And for now, you only have 85 guys on scholarship at any one point in time, and Georgia's about to have a huge number of guys who are hoping to be mid-year enrollees. And while the seniors don't count against the 85 next year, they do occupy a scholarship spot right now. And so if guys are going to transfer, and if they truly are planning on leaving, then they're actually doing Georgia a favor by doing it now, because my understanding is, anyway, and gosh knows a chance I'm wrong about this, my understanding is they do alleviate some of the roster concerns if they're willing to go ahead and make that move now and exit the premises, because Georgia's trying to find guys that are done with high school, that are ready to move on to college, but you've got to have a slot to put them in. You can't just willy-nilly accept early enrollees if you don't have a place to put them.
Yeah, and I need clarification on the rules, because is it a snapshot at any given moment that you can only have 85?
I believe so. Now, next year, once next year officially begins, there's some cushion, I believe, because of the seniors not counting. But for now, it's the way that it always been, which is at any moment in time, February 9th, March the 3rd, August or whatever, at any given moment in time, you only have 85 scholarship players on campus at any one moment. It's my understanding.
Okay. So this is the new world of college football is my expectation, where up to this point, guys are pretty much guaranteed their scholarships, right? Like if you sign, even if you stink and it didn't pan out for you and you weren't able to perform at the level that you or your team expect you to, as long as you give your best effort and you continue to commit yourself to the team, they haven't been pulling any scholarships. But in this day and age, where I think players have kind of forced their way into having more options, well, with that comes more responsibility. So if you want more options to be able to transfer, if you're unhappy with your situation, then there's a cost with that. And I think the cost that we probably will start seeing is some players that otherwise would want to hold on to their scholarship that may not be contributing to their team, be forced to make some difficult decisions. The team would be forced to make some difficult decisions and ask or no longer renew your year-to-year scholarship that's been extended to you. And what we've known for so long is that, you commit yourself to the team, you get 4 years paid for school. There are some exceptions, but really it's a 1-year scholarship is my understanding. So when you're forced with these new opportunities comes some new challenges for players. And that's where I think we might see it rear its ugly head. Now, it's not going to look good for programs if they have to make those difficult decisions, but I think fan bases are kind of selfish, and we will forgive what may seem like a cold-hearted decision if you were to tell a guy, we're not going to renew your scholarship in exchange for a former 5-star, let's say, tight end from a competitor in the SEC that you have this opportunity for. That feels bad, but I do like the aspect of adding him to our roster. So
yeah,
there's pros and cons to this new game that players and colleges are playing.
And the unfortunate thing, if you're Georgia, is it seems like if you're a fan, well, this just must be stressful. Kirby Smart's got kind of red line in terms of how close you are to the limits and everything else. But if you're Georgia, this is about the only way to do it. If you truly want to compete for a championship, you got to maximize your roster. You got to have, in the NFL, they talk about dead money, dead space when it comes to salary cap and stuff like that. You can't have that in relationship to guys that transfer out, but you don't have a scholarship ready to replace them, or, a number of guys get hurt. You don't have enough, you just don't have enough healthy bodies. You got to have 85 guys trying to contribute if you want to be able to come close to what Alabama's been able to do from a talent standpoint, or what Ohio State, for the most part, is doing in a year-in, year-out basis. It sets up a difficult challenge for Kirby Smart because they're always having to get the abacus out and crunch the numbers and figuring out who they got room for and, what needs to happen. But if you're not pushing it right to the limit of how many scholarship players you have, if you end up not using some to kind of give yourself a cushion, that's just a roster deficiency that you can't afford to have in 2020, in a time in which the rich are really seemingly getting richer in comparison to the rest of the sport.
Yeah, I think the disparity between top-tier teams and those that are in the middle is only going to grow. I don't see mid-level, somewhat competitive teams being able to bridge the gap between the haves and the have-nots, especially with this new rule that you can transfer. So if you're in a program that may be teetering at that 500% or 500 batting average, then all of a sudden maybe you want to go to one of these top tier teams that does have a spot for you because they see that you can add something. But at the end of the day, I feel like the programs that are able to build from the ground up through their signing day from guys that they have committed to them out of high school are probably going to fare better than those that are relying on the transfer portal, similar to what we saw in JUCO players. I mean, it's good to be able to add one or two that might be able to step in and fill some immediate needs. But I think most of these programs are able to fill that 85 with those studs coming out of high school that they develop and get a good 3 years, sometimes 4, before they move on, and not really relying as much on guys that are transferring. But again, this is some shifting topography as these new rules come into play and people start to learn what exactly you can and can't do with them.
John, great to talk to you as part of our Dog Nation Happy Hour, poured by Classic City Lager. Hope you enjoy the game this Saturday between Georgia and Missouri, and hope you're having a joyous holiday season as well. And we'll enjoy the chance to catch up with you on some of our programs again very soon, including right here on the Dog Nation Happy Hour. We hope to preview Georgia Vanderbilt next week. We'll knock on wood. I guess I got some wood over here. I'll knock on wood to see that game takes place. But nonetheless, I'll enjoy the chance to catch up with you here very soon too.
Always a good time. Go Dogs.
And to the rest of you guys and gals who tuned in today, thank you so much for being here. Make sure you check out some Classic City Lager from Creature Comforts Brewing Company heading towards the weekend. Good, cold beer and a great pairing for your football stuff, your holiday party stuff, socially distanced, 6 feet apart, of course. But nonetheless, taking good care of each other and enjoying a great time of year, Classic City Lager goes great with that. Y'all have a great day, great week. See you back here again this same time next week for Dog Nation Happy Hour, powered by Classic City Lager. Talk to you then, everybody.